Chapter 91. The Jeep has arrived. It seems you still need a little more pressure. Quirrell stared at Xiaoji in sheer terror. 5 dark wizards. Xiaoji had eliminated all of them with a single move. Quirrell silently thanked his lucky stars. Back at Gringotts, Xiaoji hadn't yet reached this level of ferocity. Otherwise, he'd likely have been killed long ago. Let's go. Now, Xiaoji reverted to his usual harmless demeanor as a first-year Gryffindor student. There was absolutely no trace left of the ruthless individual who'd just wiped out 5 dark wizards using fiendfire. They quietly returned to Hogwarts. Inside the castle, Xiaoji parted ways with Quirrell. Before leaving, Xiaoji once again emphasized that Quirrell mustn't act rashly and should simply wait for the right moment. Then, Xiaoji headed straight for Snape's dungeon classroom. As usual, Snape wore his perpetually gloomy expression. After letting Xiaoji inside his office, he silently returned to his seat. Xiaoji pulled over a chair. "These chairs here are awfully stiff. Why don't you get something more comfortable?" Snape ignored this trivial remark. "So, what's the current situation? You've delivered a Christmas gift to the Dark Lord. He should now trust you completely. I merely hope this 997 maneuver isn't some form of aiding the enemy." Xiaoji let out a sigh. Coming to Snape's office meant expecting no warm tea whatsoever. In fact, even if there were any, one would have to dare to drink it. Quirrell now knows how to bypass Hagrid's giant dog. Snape's pupils instantly contracted. "You gathered this intel for him?" "Of course. If I want Voldemort's trust, I must earn it through achievements," Xiaoji replied coolly. "Though I've persuaded Quirrell not to act impulsively now, I can't guarantee Voldemort won't suddenly lose his head and order Quirrell to proceed ahead of schedule. You know full well, Voldemort isn't the same as before. His mind's become somewhat unreliable nowadays. Therefore, you've come here to ask me to keep a closer watch on Quirrell, ensuring he can't make any moves within Hogwarts?" Snape spoke deliberately, each word measured.
"Exactly.
"This is crucial. As long as you're nearby, Quirrell won't dare attempt anything. But what purpose does such delay serve? The sooner they enter, the sooner we can—"
"No."
"Anything too easily obtained inevitably raises suspicion. I want them to endure countless hardships first. Only then will they wholeheartedly believe in the outcome, and trust me all the more." One crucial point, however, Xiaoji dared not reveal to Snape. Harry Potter would undoubtedly bravely cross those barriers and press onward toward the final stage. "Very well. All of us are paving the path for you. Just promise me you won't ultimately betray us for the Dark Lord." Snape's hollow eyes locked onto Xiaoji's, seemingly intent on peering straight into his very soul. "Is there any need for that? Besides, save your effort. Your legitimacy won't fathom me." With that, Xiaoji stood up and walked out of Snape's office. Watching his retreating figure, Snape's expression brimmed with unease. Might Xiaoji eventually become another Voldemort? Meanwhile, Harry and his friends had just returned from Hagrid's hut, all bearing expressions of deep concern. Earlier, they'd extracted quite a bit of information from Hagrid. Every professor had contributed enchantments to safeguard the Philosopher's Stone. Even Snape had taken part. Meaning Snape undoubtedly knew, or at least fully grasped, the nature of each protective barrier. Now, the sole obstacle remaining was Hagrid's massive dog. Fortunately, Snape hadn't yet discovered a way past it. Of course, Harry fretted over another issue. Hagrid was actually incubating a dragon egg. Should anyone learn of Hagrid secretly raising a dragon, he'd end up imprisoned in Azkaban. Lost in thought, Harry suddenly noticed Xiaoji standing nearby. Xiaoji gazed silently at him, making Harry uneasy. He had no idea what was happening. "Come with me," Xiaoji said, then headed toward his own dormitory. Ron and Hermione tried to follow, but Xiaoji added, "I'd like to speak with Harry alone, if that's all right." Ron and Hermione exchanged glances, then shrugged and stayed put. Xiaoji led the bewildered Harry back to his quarters, then opened a leather trunk right before him. "Enter," Xiaoji commanded simply. "Enter?" "Into the trunk." Harry stared at him oddly, then glanced toward the open trunk. and witnessed something utterly astonishing. Inside, a lengthy ladder descended deep into the darkness. Curious, Harry peered at the trunk's base. Had Xiaji somehow tunneled beneath the entire Gryffindor Tower? This trunk's been enchanted with the extendable ear spell. Its interior space is enormous. It's not merely a hole dug into the ground, Xiaji clarified. Harry nodded and slowly climbed inside. He truly was curious about what lay within. Once he reached the bottom and surveyed his surroundings, he finally grasped the scene fully. Whoa! Good heavens! Harry stood utterly stunned. This tiny trunk concealed an entirely separate world. Most remarkably, atop lush green grass stood a charming little cottage. Just as Harry marveled at it all, suddenly, a colossal snake slithered forth from the foliage. Startled, Harry swiftly drew his wand. Why on earth was there such a massive snake inside Xiaji's trunk? Nagini, this is my friend, don't frighten him. Xiaji hissed softly behind Harry. SSSSS. Understood. This place is wonderful, Nagini's ecstatic. Without doubt, Harry comprehended their exchange. He himself possessed Parseltongue. You're conversing with a snake? I understand it too. At this point, Harry still didn't grasp the true significance of Parseltongue. He assumed all wizards could do it. Harry, under no circumstances should you ever mention possessing Parseltongue. Xiaji spoke gravely. It's a rare gift, one not exclusive to Slytherin descendants. Yet in common perception, those who speak Serpentese are invariably dark wizards. You know full well neither of us belongs to that ilk. To avoid unwanted trouble, please keep this hidden. Harry stood frozen, though still puzzled, yet he nodded repeatedly in agreement. Xiaji continued, I asked you here today to pose a few questions. Harry nodded affirmatively. Xiaji was free to inquire. Have you already uncovered who Nicholas Flamel is? Yes, we've learned it and also discovered that the giant dog guards the Philosopher's Stone. Thankfully, Snape still hasn't found a way past that dog. Harry rattled off eagerly. Xiaji raised a hand, cutting him off. Given all you've figured out, it's evident you're hurtling toward the most perilous possible future. What do you mean? I possess a slight talent for precognition. Harry, please keep this secret. Harry gazed at him in shock. He suddenly recalled how Xiaji often spoke in cryptic ways that always later came true. Now he finally understood why. Are you saying I'm in danger? Yes, grave danger. You might even lose your life. Xiaji spoke solemnly. Thus, to help you survive this crisis, I must teach you a spell. Harry, draw your wand and attack me. Harry hesitated briefly, yet obeyed. He raised his wand and unleashed a disarming charm at Xiaji. Yet just as the spell neared him, Xiaji twisted unnaturally, vanishing from his original spot and reappearing several meters away, perfectly evading Harry's attack. Harry's eyes gleamed. This spell was absolutely incredible. Harry, this is my self-created spell, Hound Step. It's somewhat difficult, yet you must master it within 3 days. Otherwise, you'll likely perish. Xiaji spoke with utmost seriousness. Harry swallowed hard and nodded. Xiaji swiftly imparted both the incantation and key nuances of Hound Step. Yet despite prolonged practice, Harry achieved nothing. Even at his best, his form merely blurred briefly. Teleportation remained elusive. Seems I'll have to apply a bit more pressure, Harry. Xiaji shook his head, then waved his wand. Nearby, an ornamental boulder twisted grotesquely, reshaping itself into a gleaming jeep. Harry's eyes widened in shock. A deeply ominous premonition gripped him. Chapter 92. Don't hide. Charge toward the car. Wait. Are you trying to? Harry's eyes widened in shock. Xiaji climbed into the jeep made of stone. Harry, don't blame me. I really didn't want this either, but you absolutely must learn this spell. A slight smile appeared on his lips as he shifted gears and stepped on the accelerator. No. This is far too dangerous. Don't run away. Charge straight toward the vehicle. Concentrate.
No.
I don't understand. There has to be a better way. There's no other way left. If you fail to master this spell, you'll be dead within a few days. Vroom. Xiaoji slammed his foot down on the gas, sending the vehicle lurching forward. This was a jeep conjured via transfiguration by Xiaoji. He deliberately ensured the transformation wasn't fully complete, precisely to heighten the vehicle's intimidating presence. Yet in Harry's eyes, this incompletely transformed vehicle was far more terrifying than any wild beast. He'd clearly seen the deep ruts left behind in the ground by its tires. This was essentially a stone tank. Concentrate. Don't run. Use that spell. Please stop this. Terrified out of his mind, Harry turned and bolted away. Truth be told, Xiaoji himself was quite nervous. Harry wasn't some superhuman prince with extraordinary physical abilities. A direct collision was practically impossible. He merely intended to scare him. At the critical moment, he'd definitely bring the vehicle to a halt. Whoosh! Just as the stone vehicle neared Harry and Xiaoji prepared to brake. Harry vanished from his original spot, reappearing several meters away, perfectly evading Xiaoji's jeep. This truly took Xiaoji by surprise. Harry Potter clearly possessed remarkable talent. Excellent work, Harry. Remember exactly how that felt. Still shaken, Harry examined his body to ensure no limbs were missing, then opened his mouth to speak. But Xiaoji was already turning the steering wheel. Keep going. Remember that feeling. Xiaoji figured this was the perfect moment to capitalize on his progress. This spell could only be used once, so Harry had to master it fully and at will. Only then would he stand any chance of survival within Xiaoji's plans. After some time passed, Xiaoji, somewhat disappointed that it was over, stepped out of the vehicle. The jeep twisted back into an ordinary decorative stone. Meanwhile, Harry sat slumped on the ground, his face utterly pale. His magical energy had been nearly depleted, but thanks to Xiaoji, intense pressure-based training, he'd finally mastered this spell within a remarkably short span and could now wield it effortlessly. Currently, though Harry's spells lacked great power, nowhere near matching those of a standard aura, after mastering the Hound Steps technique, Xiaoji believed he'd easily surpass ordinary auras in combat. I hate you, Xiaoji. Harry lay sprawled on the ground, roaring in fury. Xiaoji shrugged helplessly. I'd much rather you hate me than have to place flowers on your grave every year. Though furious, Harry understood perfectly why Xiaoji acted this way. Still, it made him incredibly angry. He'd nearly died today. A collision with my vehicle might still leave you salvageable, but a killing curse? That leaves no chance at all. Do you still recall that dark wizard at Gringotts? Harry fell silent instantly. Once more, that dreaded green flash appeared in his mind, the one that haunted his nightmares, accompanied by those terrifying cackles. Over the following days, Harry visited Xiaoji's suitcase daily to practice the Hound Steps technique. However, Harry adamantly refused to use the stone jeep again, to which Xiaoji expressed deep regret. Through conversation, Xiaoji also learned that Hagrid was preparing to incubate that dragon egg. Naturally, he was eager to witness it too. He'd never seen a real dragon before. One day, Harry and the others approached Xiaoji excitedly. Hagrid had sent word that today was the day the little dragon would hatch. Post-herbology class, Xiaoji and his group hurried out of the classroom, racing toward Hagrid's hut. Grinning ear to ear, Hagrid warmly welcomed them. He showed no surprise at seeing Xiaoji. Harry had already informed him that he'd be joining them today. Hagrid opened his hut's door, releasing a wave of sweltering heat. Truly admirable dedication. Hagrid spent entire days watching over that dragon egg. Upon entering, Xiaoji instinctively glanced back and spotted Draco Malfoy sneaking along behind them. He recalled that during a dragon's hatching, Malfoy might catch sight of it. Thus, Xiaoji instructed Harry and the others to enter first, then turned directly toward Malfoy. Noticing Xiaoji approaching, Malfoy hastily feigned casual wandering. If I were you, I wouldn't attempt to follow someone far stronger than yourself. Ignoring Malfoy's pathetic act, Xiaoji adjusted his gaze into Snape-style deadfish eyes, locking onto Malfoy intently. Malfoy swallowed hard. I was merely strolling around. Stop pretending. Your every thought escapes me. Go back now. It's for your own good. Xiaoji gently stroked his wand. Seeing the wand suddenly appear in Xiaoji's hand, Malfoy turned deathly pale and bolted toward the castle. Xiaoji turned back, re-entering Hagrid's hut. Xiaoji, where did you go? The dragon's about to emerge. Harry stared intently at the scorched black egg. Nothing much, just sent Malfoy scurrying back. He'd been sneaking after us. Harry was utterly astonished. He hadn't noticed Malfoy at all. Hermione clutched her chest. Thank goodness you chased him off. If he'd seen Hagrid raising a dragon, the consequences would have been dreadful. Even if 997 saw it and Obliviate would suffice, Xiaoji replied calmly.
Oh.
Of course, we couldn't use that curse on him. I mean, if anything went wrong, you'd risk expulsion. Hermione gasped in alarm. Xiaoji merely shrugged indifferently. He'd long maxed out his Obliviate skill. Erasing just a fragment of Malfoy's memory? Even rewriting his memories entirely, making him believe he'd always been a girl. That was entirely possible. At that moment, the black dragon egg atop the table emitted a sound. The dragon was hatching. Harry and the others watched the egg anxiously. They feared complications. Raising a dragon illegally was a grave offense. They dreaded Hagrid being discovered and imprisoned at Azkaban. Unlike them, however, Xiaoji wore an expression nearly identical to Hagrid's, utterly unperturbed, even chatting casually. This is a Norwegian Ridgeback, right, Hagrid?
Have you named it yet?
Oh, absolutely. I plan to call it Norbert. Hagrid exclaimed excitedly. Meanwhile, cracks multiplied rapidly across the dragon egg's surface. Crack! Suddenly, the egg split open, and a rather ugly, ferocious-looking baby dragon emerged, spewing a tiny jet of flame. Chapter 93. The Traceless Extension Charm That Shocked Hermione. It's kind of ugly, Xiaoji said, eyeing the wrinkly little dragon with some disdain.
Oh.
Look how adorable he is, Hagrid exclaimed excitedly. The little dragon promptly bit Hagrid's hand.
Oh. See?
This little guy recognizes me. He recognizes his mom? Hagrid cried joyfully. I think he's just plain hungry, Xiaoji replied with a grin. Whoosh! The little dragon opened its mouth and spewed a jet of flame, setting Hagrid's beard ablaze. Oh, look at this lively little fellow. Hagrid hurriedly patted out the flames on his beard. The little Norwegian Ridgeback, Norbert, curiously observed everyone around him. Then his gaze landed on Xiaoji. Norbert sensed a very comforting aura emanating from Xiaoji, one that made him want to get close. Norbert approached Xiaoji, nudged his hand with his tiny head, and affectionately licked it. Xiaoji instinctively pulled his hand back. A dragon's tongue has tiny barbs, and even at such a young age, being licked by one still stung quite a bit. Norbert gazed at Xiaoji with a pitiful expression. Thanks to Xiaoji's innate druidic abilities, all animals naturally felt drawn to him. Thus, Norbert mistook Xiaoji, the very first person who made him feel such affection, for a family member. Seeing how close Norbert was to Xiaoji, Hagrid couldn't help but feel a bit jealous. He quickly fetched some food to feed the dragon himself. Yet Norbert bared his fangs at Hagrid and refused to accept any food from him. Instead, he turned his head back towards Xiaoji, full of anticipation, as if waiting for Xiaoji to feed him. Hagrid, resigned, handed the food over to Xiaoji. Xiaoji took the bottle of chicken blood brandy Hagrid had prepared and brought it close to Norbert's mouth. Norbert sniffed it, then promptly opened his jaws, clamped onto the bottle's mouth, and began drinking. Oh, he's absolutely lovely. Such a darling little guy. Hagrid cooed from the side, showering Norbert with loving glances, even though Norbert clearly disliked his proximity and eyed him warily. Hagrid, do you know just how fast Norwegian Ridgebacks grow? Hermione couldn't help but ask. While continuing to feed Norbert, Xiaoji answered on Hagrid's behalf. Pretty fast, actually. From what I've learned, in just 1 week he could grow to 3 times his current size. Hagrid, you can't keep him forever. Before long, he'll be as big as your entire house. How on earth will you hide him then? Harry tried to reason with Hagrid, urging him not to foolishly keep an illegal dragon. Hagrid, you've got to let him go. He can't stay here. I know. Of course I know I can't stay with him forever. But he's still so small. If left out in the wild, he'd surely die, Hagrid said, eyes brimming with tears. He truly couldn't bear to part with Norbert just yet. Every extra day mattered. Hagrid, stay calm. Your house is made entirely of wood. One careless breath of fire from Norbert, and you'll be in serious trouble, Ron advised. But I can't just abandon him. I simply can't, Hagrid replied sadly. Siaji set down the feeding bottle. No need to worry, Hagrid. Dig a hole. I've got a plan. Oh no. You can't bury him alive, Hagrid cried out in protest. Siaji face-bombed. Who said anything about burying him alive? Just dig the hole, Hagrid. Confused, Hagrid nonetheless obeyed and began digging a hole in his backyard. Why is Hagrid digging a hole? Harry wondered. Haven't you remembered my suitcase? Siaji asked with a smile. Right. We can use the extension charm to create a space and hide him there, Harry exclaimed excitedly. But what then? We can't hide him forever, Hermione pointed out. Have you all forgotten? Ron mentioned his brother Charlie specializes in dragon taming. We should write to him and ask for advice, Siaji suggested. That's right, Ron cheered, vowing to write to his brother at once. Once Hagrid finished digging a proper cellar, Siaji leapt inside and began casting the extension charm. Hermione watched in utter awe as the underground space rapidly expanded. She herself had attempted this spell before, hoping to enlarge the interior space of her tiny bag. Yet she'd quickly realized it was far beyond her current abilities. Now, however, this very spell she struggled to master was being wielded by Siaji with flawless precision. She hadn't even managed to slightly enlarge her bag, yet Siaji was effortlessly reshaping an entire cellar. This left Hermione feeling rather disheartened. They were the same age, so why was he so exceptionally gifted? She then recalled the DA ring, which also contained the extension charm, another creation of Siaji's. Yet this was the first time she'd witnessed him cast it firsthand. Her admiration for him only deepened. The cellar's interior kept growing until Siaji finally ceased casting. He judged the space ample enough and began enchanting the ceiling, using the same magic that adorned the Great Hall's ceiling at Hogwarts. Instantly, the cellar's ceiling transformed into a perfect replica of the sky, blue, with clouds and a radiant sun. Of course, this was merely a projection, a clever illusion meant to mask the true nature of the space. The cellar thus brightened considerably, becoming nearly indistinguishable from daylight outside. Siaji then swiftly enchanted other areas as well. Though somewhat rough and nowhere near as elegant as his own suitcase, the space was certainly sufficient to house a small dragon. Hagrid was overflowing with gratitude towards Siaji. Still, Siaji reminded him gently that Norbert would ultimately have to leave. This dampened Hagrid's spirits considerably. Over the following weeks, Siaji made it a habit to visit Norbert daily, bringing him food. Since Norbert now regarded Siaji as family and largely ignored everyone else, Hagrid found himself utterly helpless with the dragon. Meanwhile, Quirrell remained cautious, though Snape grew increasingly irritable. He'd been keeping close watch on Quirrell daily, leaving him with little rest. As for Siaji, who'd helped him dig that hole, Snape once again dutifully noted him down in his mental ledger. Soon, Charlie's reply arrived. He gladly agreed to take Norbert in and arranged a meeting with Harry and the others. Siaji had no objections. He'd already tamed Norbert through his druidic talents, yet he saw no reason to keep him. After all, Norbert was still a tiny hatchling, and one must never underestimate the havoc a mischievous little dragon could wreak. Thus, Siaji saw no issue with letting Charlie have him. Thanks to Siaji's help feeding Norbert, Ron escaped the fate described in the original tale. Norbert never bit him. That very night, Harry and Ron, cloaked in invisibility, set off to deliver Norbert to Charlie. Hermione, who'd accompanied them originally, stayed behind this time. Siaji himself took no part. Had he been present, Norbert would have absolutely refused to stay calm inside the trunk. I can barely type this on my phone now, The battery's about to die. I'm dying too. Chapter 94. The plan begins. I may have to kill you now. Since Xiaji did not take part in the operation that night, he only learned of its outcome the following day. The mission had been only half successful. Norbert had indeed been delivered safely, but Harry and Ron were immediately arrested by Filch. The reason? They became so excited upon returning that they forgot to wear their invisibility cloaks. Xiaji found this utterly baffling. What an incomprehensibly stupid move. In the original storyline, it was Harry and Hermione who delivered Norbert, yet still forgot the cloak. This time, Harry had Ron as his partner, yet they managed to pull off the same idiotic blunder. There was really no need to ask who deserved the blame here. As a result, both Harry and Ron each lost 50 points, causing Gryffindor to plummet from first place to the bottom of the standings. Thankfully, since Draco Malfoy knew nothing about the dragon, Neville Longbottom never targeted Harry and was consequently not caught. That spared Gryffindor further point deductions. Still, this incident was enough to transform Harry from one of the most beloved and admired figures at school into a target of widespread hostility. Harry himself felt deeply guilty. Thanks to his mistake, Gryffindor's chances of winning the House Cup had vanished. Even students from Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, who otherwise opposed Slytherin's victory, refused to show Harry any kindness. Xiaji simply couldn't grasp how anyone could forget their invisibility cloak atop the tower and just walk away. The next evening, Harry stood before Xiaji, brimming with remorse. He assumed Xiaji would mock him just like everyone else. Yet after a long pause, Xiaji merely spoke. Seems I'll have to master the disillusionment charm. And my Jeep. I'll learn it. I'll definitely learn it. Harry hurriedly interrupted. Just, please never bring the Jeep up again. Xiaji. In the days that followed, Harry suffered greatly under the ostracism of his peers. Just as in the original tale, Harry and Ron were originally scheduled to serve detention in the Forbidden Forest. But ever since Xiaji had intervened there once, the professors dared no longer send students into that place. Even if they had, they wouldn't have encountered Voldemort drinking unicorn blood. After all, thanks to Xiaji's intervention, Voldemort and Quirrell no longer needed it to survive. Thus, Harry and Ron were lucky enough to be assigned detention under Snape instead. Xiaji would have wagered his Sorcerer's Stone that both would have preferred the Forbidden Forest to Snape's company. Sure enough, when they returned that night, they reeked horribly of fish and slime. Their fingernails were caked with frog innards. Snape truly excelled at making others suffer. Harry recounted their ordeal in horrified tones. He made us clean out frog entrails without gloves. After filling an entire bucket, he demanded we collect buckets more of slug slime. Ron, who'd once adored meals above all else, now stared blankly at a meat pie Xiaji had left for him, his eyes utterly lifeless. That old bat's truly cruel. He must have known we'd be punished and planned this just for us, Xiaji murmured sympathetically. Hermione swallowed hard. She'd been slated to join Harry, and thus narrowly avoided Snape's torment. She shot Xiaji a grateful glance. You saved me, Xiaji. Otherwise, I'd be suffering under Snape now. She was thankful, for it was Xiaji who'd advised her against joining the mission. Of course, this wasn't foresight on his part. He'd merely figured two boys could manage Norbert more easily. Time passed, and though Harry still endured social isolation, the mounting workload soon buried everyone in the library. Exams loomed, demanding relentless focus. Yet Xiaji remained untouched by this academic storm. First-year material posed no challenge whatsoever. His own pursuits kept him busy. Mornings were spent sipping tea with Professor Dumbledore, afternoons replying to a certain anonymous Mr. G, and evenings chatting amiably with the great Dark Lord in Quirrell's office, all while envisioning their shared future. Life, for him, remained fulfilling. At last, exams arrived. Subjects requiring rote memorization, like History of Magic, posed no threat to Xiaji. His sharp memory and knack for recall ensured success. During his Transfiguration exam, he'd barely entered when Professor McGonagall, smiling, awarded him an O before asking him to transfigure a mouse into a snuff box. Upon completing all tests, many students flocked outside to the Black Lake for relaxation. Xiaoji sat beneath a tree conversing with Cassandra Volt when he noticed Harry sprinting toward Hagrid's hut, Ron close behind. Hermione approached Xiaoji instead. Harry seems to have noticed something odd. Actually, he really ought to see Madame Pomfrey. His scar keeps aching. Concerned, Hermione spoke. Xiaoji's eyes narrowed slightly. At last, Harry recalled what was amiss. Care to join me? Let's see what he's found, Hermione urged.
Xiaoji shook his head.
I've matters to attend to. Should Harry feel lost, tell him to seek Professor Dumbledore. Rising, he turned to Cassandra, voice hushed. I must handle something vital, utterly vital. Go on then, I'm not stopping you, she replied, head lowered, seemingly indifferent. Yet beneath her book, her hand clenched into a fist. He'd be venturing into danger again, and without me. Meanwhile, Hermione watched Xiaoji depart, puzzled, before hurrying toward Harry. Xiaoji's intent? To ensure Hermione returned to Harry's side. Without her, they'd fail at the very first hurdle. His fingers brushed his ring, sending forth a message. The plan commences today. It's time for you to leave. Tonight, I may have to strike against you. Be cautious. With swift strides, Xiaoji headed toward the castle, toward Quirrell's office. Chapter 95. Xiaoji. Tonight, I have a date with Voldemort. Dumbledore, Xiaoji's occlumency skills have grown so powerful that he can now face the Dark Lord without any difficulty. Snape spoke, his face as gloomy as ever. So, can we truly trust everything he tells you? Dumbledore fell silent for a long while before replying softly, I choose to trust him. But now you can no longer read his thoughts, correct? Why? Snape pressed on, his voice grave. Dumbledore fell silent once more. Let me be frank with you, Severus. If Xiaoji were already 17 years old, I would not trust him at all. I'd be extremely wary of him. Yet right now, he's only 11. Back in Albania, he had no opportunity to learn occlumency. Back then, I studied him very carefully. But people do change. Of course they do, Severus. Precisely because of this, isn't it our duty to help him become the person we hope he'll become? Dumbledore gazed calmly at Snape. If we expelled him from Hogwarts, cast him out of the wizarding world entirely, do you realize what would happen? Severus, his talent far surpasses even Voldemort's. Neither of us wants such a thing to occur. I remain deeply concerned that he might eventually side with the Dark Lord. Snape voiced his fears. Faced with immense power, many people lose their way. I believe he won't be swayed by Voldemort. They're simply not of the same kind. Dumbledore slowly turned his gaze toward the window. An owl had just flown through the headmaster's office window, dropping a letter onto his desk. The plan has already begun, Severus. Your part in it is complete. Tonight, we'll make our move. Naturally, it's best if you remain unseen. Voldemort still has no idea you've betrayed him. If possible, I'd prefer you stay hidden for now. Xiaoji knocked on Quirrell's office door. He arrived at just the right moment. Voldemort was fully conscious now. After closing the door, Xiaoji spoke respectfully. My lord, tonight presents the perfect opportunity to obtain the Philosopher's Stone. Voldemort exclaimed eagerly. I've awaited this day for so long. Is Dumbledore absent from Hogwarts tonight? I forged a letter from the Ministry of Magic, Xiaoji replied. Thus, Dumbledore will leave Hogwarts tonight and won't return until tomorrow. Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Voldemort was ecstatic. He'd waited far too long for this. Even if Dumbledore had only been absent for 30 minutes, Voldemort would have easily secured the stone. The various obstacles set up by the professors seemed utterly childish and laughable to him. But what about Snape? He's kept such close watch over me. Quirrell was still terrified. That old bat Snape had been shadowing him constantly. Quirrell suspected Snape, even waited outside the restroom whenever he went. The final exams just concluded. He's grading papers now. He truly has no time to monitor you today. Xiaoji offered the pre-prepared excuse. Aside from practical exams, potions also included written tests. Snape indeed had plenty to do today and couldn't possibly watch Quirrell. Quirrell remained anxious. But what if he isn't grading papers and still keeping watch? The stone is so important. Then kill him. Voldemort no longer wished to wait. Resurrection consumed his every thought. Should Snape, who might already have betrayed him, dare stand in his way, Voldemort wouldn't hesitate to eliminate him. Servants could always be replaced. Once we obtain the stone, we'll depart at once, Xiaji nodded. Reaching Hogsmeade will allow us to apparate away immediately. No, Xiaji. I'll leave first. You'll remain at Hogwarts. Voldemort's hoarse voice rang out. Xiaji frowned, his tone urgent. Why must I stay behind? I gain nothing here. I can't grow stronger at all. No, Xiaji. Never underestimate Hogwarts. This castle holds countless secrets. Much of my own knowledge was gained here. Moreover, I need you to stay at Hogwarts. I believe your abilities will earn Dumbledore's trust. Remain close to him until my return. Then, your role will be absolutely vital. Voldemort felt deep satisfaction as he perceived Xiaji's resentment and disappointment within his mind. Clearly, Xiaji wished to accompany him, yet servants were plentiful. Such a valuable pawn was far rarer. Upon my return, I'll grant you a status second only to my own. You know status holds no meaning for me. Of course, I understand what you truly seek. As I've said, we're alike. Eventually, I'll even share with you the secrets of immortality. Voldemort was merely making grand promises. Requests for flowers. Truthfully, at this point, he had nothing more to offer Xiaji beyond such empty promises. Very well, Xiaji reluctantly agreed. After leaving Quirrell's office, Xiaji smirked inwardly. He scoffed at whatever rewards Voldemort had dangled before him. He had no desire to become a Horcrux, no wish to turn into a madman. What good was immortality if one lost all reason and emotion? Besides, Xiaji possessed the stone. He could live just as long on his own. Xiaji didn't head to the Gryffindor common room. Instead, he went straight to Snape's office. He couldn't let Harry and the others find him. They'd undoubtedly ask for his help. Yet tonight, Xiaji had plans with Voldemort. He stayed in Snape's office until midnight. Just before leaving, Snape handed him a small vial. Even without your saying so, I guess that foolish, arrogant Potter would appear tonight. Xiaji stared in surprise. The vial held merely one drop of potion, yet it shimmered with an enchanting glow. Keep watch over that arrogant lad for me. If he dies, it'll cause trouble. Snape thrust the vial into Xiaji's arms, then slammed the door shut. Clutching the vial, Xiaji sighed inwardly. That old bat Snape truly spared no expense. He'd given Xiaji an entire drop of Felix Felicis for Harry's sake. Liquid luck? How intriguing. Xiaji uncorked the vial and drank it down. Not bad at all. Xiaji cast an invisibility charm and slipped into the corridor on the 4th floor's right side. There, Quirrell awaited him. Xiaji dispelled the charm. Quirrell, glancing around nervously, jumped in fright. Xiaji drew his wand. His body shifted and transformed into a tall, slender, middle-aged wizard. Quirrell found the new appearance familiar. Soon, he recalled, this was the leader of the group of wizards who'd attempted to rob them earlier. The Dark Lord ordered me to remain hidden. Thus, I mustn't reveal my true face. Quirrell nodded, then turned toward the door, his face etched with fear. He knew what lay beyond it. Hagrid's ferocious dog, Fluffy. Alohomora. Chapter 96, A Speedrun Guide, and the Fire Shield Charm. Click. The door lock was undone by a locking spell. Xiaji glanced at Quirrell. Quirrell shrank back, too afraid to enter. Last time, he'd nearly been torn to shreds by that three-headed dog. Xiaji shook his head, then took out a music box. The moment they stepped inside, the three-headed dog Fluffy immediately stood up. Its 3 heads and 6 eyes stared curiously at Xiaji. Thanks to his druidic talents, Xiaji was rather surprised to realize that this 3-headed dog showed absolutely no hostility. Roar! The middle head let out a bark. Behind Xiaji, Quirrell turned deathly pale from fear. He couldn't understand why Xiaoji still hadn't played the music. Fluffy was clearly ready to pounce on them.
Roar.
Have you come to play with us?
Roar. Roar.
We're so bored here. Roar. I agree. Xiaoji 010 scratched his head in bewilderment. So, all this time, Fluffy had seemed so ferocious simply because it wanted to play? Even Snape, whose legs had nearly been bitten off, had actually been playing with it? Without hesitation, Xiaoji opened the music box. You guys should go back to sleep now. Aside from Hagrid, anyone else trying to play with this giant beast will probably end up dead. Hearing the music, Fluffy indeed began swaying unsteadily, growing drowsy. Eventually, it couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed to the ground, fast asleep. Quirrell timidly stepped forward and opened the trapdoor, casting a damping spell on himself before jumping down. Xiaoji followed right behind him, waving his wand to conjure a massive fireball that descended after him. Upon sensing the flames, the devil's snare that had been preparing to ensnare them instantly retracted. Quirrell had already briefed Xiaoji on this section's contents. Together, they devised a strategy to swiftly bypass the devil's snare. Without slowing their pace, they hurried down the stone corridor. Along the way, Xiaoji moved ahead of Quirrell, constantly stroking his ring to transmit messages. He preferred not to do this from behind Quirrell, since there was a face on the back of Quirrell's head. Soon, they entered a brightly lit chamber. Opposite them stood a door, locked tight. Above them, countless winged keys flitted about the ceiling. Xiaoji instantly spotted which key matched that lock. For both Xiaoji and Quirrell, identifying the correct key posed no difficulty whatsoever. Quirrell glanced at a nearby broomstick, intending to fly up and grab the key. But Xiaoji had already transformed into a swirl of black mist and shot upward. This wasn't his obscurest form, it was an enhanced flying spell personally taught to him by Voldemort. It was far more convenient than using a broomstick. Xiaoji snatched the key, then descended to the ground, shoving it forcefully into the lock to open the door. He'd acted so roughly on purpose, to leave a small mark on the key so that, later, Harry and the others could easily recognize it. After opening the door, Xiaoji released the key back into the air. However, battered from such rough treatment, it now seemed rather listless. Xiaoji gave a slight nod, then followed Quirrell through the doorway. Beyond it lay a giant chessboard set up by Professor McGonagall. To progress, they'd have to win the game. Yet neither Xiaoji nor Quirrell slowed down. Xiaoji waved his wand, casting a confusion spell. Instantly, the giant stone chess pieces, which had been poised to draw their swords, froze in place. Thus, Xiaoji and Quirrell effortlessly cleared this obstacle. After they departed, the effects of the confusion spell gradually faded. Finding no one around, the pieces returned to their original positions as if nothing had happened. The next room made Xiaoji frown slightly. It reeked horribly. Inside lurked a ferocious troll, far larger than the one Xiaoji had slain earlier. Quirrell waved his wand, and the troll's massive club flew from its grip, smashing squarely into its own forehead. Stunned senseless, the troll collapsed heavily to the ground, a bloody lump swelling on its head. As for Snape's challenge, it was a logic puzzle. Only by drinking the correct potion could one pass through the fiery barrier. For Xiaoji, this posed no problem whatsoever. He swiftly identified the right potion. Yet, mindful of leaving some behind for Harry to use, he refrained from drinking it himself. Instead, he had Quirrell drink first, then enter the fiery gate. Once Quirrell had passed through, Xiaoji gently flicked his wand. A soft blue flame materialized, hugging his body closely before enveloping him entirely. This was an advanced application of the Grindelwald-style gas stove technique, a fire shield. Protected by the fiend fire, Xiaoji breezed past Snape's fiery barrier, ensuring there remained just enough potion for Harry to consume. Beyond the flames lay a large circular chamber. Xiaoji knew this was actually a hidden room on the castle's first floor. Professor Dumbledore had informed him of it. At its center stood a massive mirror, the Mirror of Erist. Currently, Quirrell stood transfixed before it, gazing adoringly at his own reflection. In the mirror, he saw himself obtaining the Philosopher's Stone and presenting it to his master. Xiaozhi slowly approached from behind him. Found the stone? We'd better hurry. I've got a bad feeling about this. But I can't locate the stone anywhere, Coral replied anxiously, running his hands along the mirror's frame in search of any trace of it. Clearly, this was futile effort. Just as Coral prepared to call upon his master for help, the fiery barrier flickered once more, and a slender figure stepped through. Xiaozhi turned to look. It was Harry. You? Why are you here? I thought it'd be Snape. Harry stood stunned. He'd always believed poor Professor Quirrell was the victim, but now it seemed otherwise. Of course. Snape certainly doesn't seem like a decent chap, does he? Quirrell sneered. Xiaozhi stood silently to one side, hand reaching once more toward his ring, gently stroking it. It's time now. Be ready at any moment. Quirrell then faced off against Harry, and like most talkative villains, began recounting the whole story. Harry thus learned that Snape was his true savior, while Quirrell himself had tried to harm him. After that, events unfolded much as in the original tale. Harry was compelled to stand before the mirror. He obtained the stone, yet lied, claiming his reflection was shaking hands with Professor Dumbledore. Yet all his lies were effortlessly seen through by Voldemort's legitimacy. The stone's in his pocket. Chapter 97. Xiaozhi and Dumbledore engage in a passionate duel. At this point, Quirrell had already unwrapped his turban, allowing his master and Harry to converse. It was from this very moment that events began to deviate from the original storyline. In the original tale, Voldemort was already on his last legs at this point, barely sustaining himself by drinking unicorn blood so he could speak to Harry. When Harry attempted to flee, he could only command Quirrell to chase after him. Voldemort himself was utterly powerless to intervene. But now, thanks to that sip of milk given by Xiaozhi, Voldemort was brimming with energy. He swiftly took full control of Quirrell's body. Upon seeing this, Harry turned around and bolted, desperate to escape. Xiaozhi stepped forward, raising his wand and aiming it at Harry.
No.
He's mine, Voldemort roared, halting Xiaozhi's actions. Avada Kedavra. A flash of green light illuminated the entire circular classroom. Harry dashed off frantically. Not only was there Quirrell and Voldemort inhabiting him, but also a tall, thin wizard standing silently off to the side. On his own, there was no way Harry could defeat them all. Moreover, he'd already obtained the Philosopher's Stone. Fleeing was undoubtedly the right move. Yet just as he neared the fiery portal, an instinctive warning flared within him. This was the heightened intuition forged through hundreds of encounters with Death Eater ambushes. If he didn't move now, disaster awaited. Without even glancing back, Harry expertly activated Dog Trot. Whoosh! In an instant, Harry vanished from his original spot and reappeared several meters away. The vicious green beam struck the steps beneath the portal, sending a shower of debris into the air. Xiaozhi exhaled in relief. His special training had clearly paid off. Voldemort stared in astonishment at Harry's dog trot technique. I had no idea you possessed such abilities, he exclaimed, then unleashed another killing curse using Quirrell's wand. Harry narrowly evaded this spell, though doing so pushed him even farther from the exit. Voldemort struck again. Harry dodged once more. Realizing escape was no longer possible, he abandoned flight plans and, after evading another attack, swung his wand decisively toward Voldemort. Reducto. Expelliarmus. Petrificus Totalis. Though none of Harry's spells affected Voldemort, the Dark Lord's curses likewise failed to land on Harry. Furious, Voldemort saw Harry as nothing but a slippery eel. Moreover, limited to Quirrell's body, he couldn't wield many of his most potent spells. My lord, allow me to assist. We've already delayed him long enough. Xiaozhi spoke up after receiving Professor Dumbledore's response through their ring. Kill him. The stone's in his pocket. Voldemort finally consented, recognizing that Harry's elusiveness meant capturing him would require exhausting his magical reserves, a process bound to take far too long. Xiaozhi advanced, effortlessly deflecting an explosive curse aimed at him by Harry. The spell veered off course and, coincidentally, struck a nearby wall, a wall that happened to be rather fragile, resulting in a large hole. Seeing two foes converging on him, Harry panicked. He dodged Voldemort's killing curse, only to be struck by Xiaoji's preemptive stunning spell and promptly collapsed. Voldemort rejoiced. Xiaoji's failure to use killing curses raised no suspicions. The Dark Lord assumed Xiaoji wished to reserve that privilege for himself. Excellent, very thoughtful, satisfied. Voldemort raised his wand and unleashed another killing curse toward Harry's prone form. Just then, a tall, slender figure entered through the portal, Professor Dumbledore. With a wave of his hand, he teleported Harry several meters aside, evading the lethal beam. Dumbledore had actually arrived earlier, patiently awaiting this precise moment. Having rescued Harry, Dumbledore fired a blazing spell toward Voldemort. Xiaoji shoved Quirrell's body aside and retaliated with his own killing curse. The green and red beams collided midair, and Xiaoji felt his wand nearly torn from his grip. Is this Professor Dumbledore's true power? You must go now. I can't hold him back much longer. Xiaoji feigned exhaustion while exchanging spells with Dumbledore. Voldemort, initially planning to ambush Dumbledore, froze in place. His strength hadn't recovered, and Quirrell's body limited his capabilities. Even a surprise attack stood little chance of success. A wizard of Dumbledore's caliber knew this all too well. Meanwhile, Xiaoji was merely a novice. His ability to withstand even a moment of Dumbledore's assault bordered on miraculous. If he delayed any longer, escape might prove impossible. For now, Xiaoji seemed to falter, barely evading Dumbledore's spell. He then hurled a pigeon egg-sized orb. It exploded, unleashing thick black mist that engulfed the room. Seizing Quirrell's body, Xiaoji transformed into black vapor and escaped through the hole Harry had created. The mist seemingly deterred Dumbledore from immediate pursuit. Stay behind. Don't forget the task I entrusted you with, Voldemort rasped. Xiaoji nodded, then dispersed into mist in another direction. Finding a secluded corner devoid of witnesses or portraits, he reverted to human form. He rested briefly, then paled dramatically, clearly expended vast magical energy. This was all part of his plan. After exchanging spells with Dumbledore, even at reduced power, he'd inevitably appear weakened. Once recovered, Xiaoji charged after Voldemort's fleeing form. By now, Voldemort's fragmented soul was utterly drained. Pursuing Harry's evasive maneuvers had taxed him severely. Reluctantly, he relinquished control of Quirrell's body. Quirrell fled wildly. If he escaped Hogwarts grounds, he'd be free. His body's depletion had rendered him incapable of flight charms, so running was his only option. Hurry! I won't be able to assist you much longer. Voldemort hissed from the back of his skull. After rounding a corridor, Quirrell halted abruptly. Before him stood Hermione, her face etched with terror. The window glass beside her reflected Quirrell's monstrous visage, a sight that petrified Hermione. Avada Kedavra. Quirrell unleashed the killing curse without hesitation. Fleeing for his life, he saw no one as an obstacle, only a target. Hermione gazed at the oncoming green beam, too terrified to even attempt evasion. Chapter 98. Hermione cries tears of joy. A hint from Felix Felicis. Hermione watched as the green beam of light rushed toward her at lightning speed. There was no way she could dodge it. Xiaoji had once warned her never to use unforgivable curses. Among them, the killing curse produced a green beam of magic, and she had also heard Professor Quirrell utter those exact words. Avada Kedavra. So, am I going to die? In that fleeting instant, Hermione thought of many people and many things. She thought of her parents, as well as Xiaoji and Harry. She recalled the sheer joy she felt upon receiving her Hogwarts acceptance letter. This must be what people call a moment of clarity before death. Only, she felt such reluctance. She had only just begun to witness the true wonder of magic. Slowly, Hermione closed her eyes. Bang! Just as she prepared herself to accept death, she felt her body suddenly knocked sideways by a force. She tumbled to the ground, only to see that same green beam strike squarely into the figure standing before her. Hermione felt as though something was stuck in her throat. She wanted to scream, yet no sound came out. She stared blankly at the person now falling to the ground. What met her eyes was a head of black, slightly messy hair and a familiar face. Only now was that face unnaturally pale, its eyes vacant. Xiaji was dead. Tears welled in Hermione's eyes as she grabbed her wand and aimed it at Quirrell. Which spell should she use? Suddenly, she recalled the spell Quirrell had just cast at her. AV. But before she could finish uttering the first syllable, Quirrell was struck by a blazing red beam. His body gradually turned to ash. A black shadow, bearing a grotesque face, shot skyward. Another fiery spell struck that shadow, yet it passed right through it harmlessly. Ha ha ha! The shadow let out a maniacal laugh before phasing through a wall and vanishing entirely. Hermione stood frozen, wand still raised, when she noticed an enraged Professor Dumbledore. He glared furiously at the departing shadow. Dropping her wand, Hermione's legs still trembled uncontrollably, but she forced them to move, commanding them to carry her forward, to Xiaji's side. She practically crawled the short distance. It seemed impossibly long at that moment. She hesitated to look at his lifeless body, yet still threw herself beside it. Xiaji lay there, eyes wide open and lifeless, gazing blankly at the sky. Professor Dumbledore rushed over, sorrow etched upon his face, as he gazed at Xiaji's body. Meanwhile, Hermione clung to him, weeping bitterly. He had witnessed the entire scene, Xiaji risking his life to save a classmate. How could someone like that possibly be the Dark Lord? This wasn't even the first time he'd shielded others from the killing curse. Dumbledore felt such guilt, he wished he could have died in Xiaji's place. Yet, with deep sorrow, he bent down to lift Xiaji's limp body. He couldn't leave such a noble boy lying on the cold ground. Xiaji was a hero. Dumbledore grasped Xiaji's lifeless arm. Suddenly, Xiaji straightened his back and drew a painful breath. To Dumbledore's delight, life returned to Xiaji's eyes. Xiaji turned to see Hermione weeping profusely and Professor Dumbledore with eyes red with emotion. "Professor, I think I messed up." That was the first thing he said upon regaining consciousness. Hermione threw her arms around him, tears of joy streaming down her face.
No.
"My boy, you did perfectly. In fact, you did better than anyone else ever could." Professor Dumbledore beamed at him. Xiaji reached up and touched the crescent-shaped pendant hanging around his neck. That once exquisitely crafted amulet now bore a deep crack. He knew that one more killing curse would shatter it completely. Seeing the warmth in Dumbledore's eyes, he knew his goal had been achieved. Earlier, he and Voldemort had secretly arranged something with Quirrell. Should Quirrell fail to escape, Xiaji would step forward and personally end his life, thereby earning Dumbledore's trust. After all, Voldemort couldn't die until all his Horcruxes were destroyed. Confident in his own immortality, he intended to use Quirrell as a sacrifice so Xiaji could truly infiltrate Dumbledore's inner circle. Xiaji pretended to accept this plan with some hesitation. This too was part of his and Dumbledore's larger strategy. Voldemort's decision had actually been influenced by Xiaji himself. Every night, he visited Quirrell's office to converse amicably with Voldemort, and those meetings bore fruit. Through a series of impressive displays and carefully placed hints, Voldemort came to view Quirrell as utterly useless compared to Xiaji. Thus, he voluntarily proposed this arrangement. This allowed Xiaji to eliminate Quirrell as part of his plan. He'd gain Voldemort's trust, strip him of a host body, and delay his resurrection efforts. Yet when he arrived, he saw Hermione facing Quirrell directly, and immediately sensed trouble. As expected, cornered and desperate, Quirrell unleashed a killing curse. Xiaji intended to rush over, save Hermione, and then kill Quirrell in one swift motion. That alone wouldn't have disrupted his plan. Quirrell's killing curse posed no real threat to him. He had 100 ways to shield Hermione while remaining unharmed. But just as he prepared to act, a strange intuition struck him. If he pushed Hermione aside and took the killing curse himself, the results would be far better. He recalled the Felix Felicis he'd consumed beforehand. He knew its power, so he decided to trust this feeling. With Cassandra Vole's protective amulet, Quirrell's killing curse shouldn't harm him at all. And indeed, when he shoved Hermione away and faced the curse head-on, his innate danger sense remained silent, confirming that absorbing that spell posed absolutely no risk. Thus unfolded what had just happened. He'd saved Hermione by intercepting the killing curse, and just as he began to faint, he saw Professor Dumbledore standing behind Quirrell. At that moment, he knew he'd bet right. Enraged, Dumbledore swiftly killed Quirrell. Moreover, he was deeply moved by Siagi's selfless act, and now he'd have zero doubts about him. Initially, Voldemort watched in fury as Siagi sacrificed himself to save someone. He assumed Siagi, like Snape, would go to such lengths for a woman, wasting all his efforts. Yet before departing, Voldemort noticed a crack in the amulet around Siagi's neck. His sharp eyes instantly recognized its purpose. It shielded against killing curses. Observing Dumbledore's reaction, he deduced Siagi's true intent. He knew Dumbledore admired such selflessness above all else, and so, from that day onward, Siagi had successfully earned his place among Dumbledore's closest allies. That's why Voldemort left laughing with utter delight. Chapter 99, Hermione, Cassandra Vole. Do you like Siagi? Siagi. Actions during this incident earned him the trust of both Professor Dumbledore and Voldemort, a definite win-win situation. He lay on the ground, feigning weakness. Thanks to the effects of Felix Felicis, he sensed that it was now best to act completely exhausted and head straight to the infirmary. Hermione? I can't breathe. At that moment, Hermione was still excitedly hugging Siagi tightly. While he didn't mind the feeling, the hug was simply too tight. It made it hard for him to breathe. Hermione's face flushed red as she quickly released Siagi. She was simply overwhelmed with emotion. If Siagi had truly died trying to save her, she would have felt so guilty she might have wished to die herself. Earlier, Professor Dumbledore had explicitly told her to stay in the Gryffindor common room, yet she still felt compelled to help, only to end up encountering Quirrell. Thankfully, Siagi hadn't died. In that moment, her world seemed to regain its color and light. Blushing furiously, she thought, "Good heavens, if Cassandra saw me hugging Siagi like this, what would she think? Just what exactly is my relationship with Siagi?" Professor Dumbledore watched Siagi warmly, then flashed a meaningful smile. Siagi stared back at that smile, utterly speechless. "Stop smiling and just get me to the infirmary. I still think I can be saved." Dumbledore bent down and lifted Siagi into his arms, preparing to take him to the infirmary. Even though the protective charm had blocked the killing curse, Siagi had still been struck by it. He absolutely needed a thorough medical checkup to rule out any nasty side effects.
Ding.
Quirrell has been killed by Professor Dumbledore. However, this outcome was heavily influenced by the host. Congratulations, host, on completing the unicorn's revenge quest.
Ding.
Congratulations, host, on obtaining the full version of the Unicorn Shadow talent. Siagi had almost forgotten about this quest entirely. He had no idea how powerful this summoned unicorn phantom would be, so he decided to test it out later at his leisure. For now, he had to play the role of a fragile, sickly patient. When Harry saw Professor Dumbledore and Hermione, both with slightly teary eyes, he immediately sensed something was off. Then he noticed Dumbledore carrying Siagi. Siagi's face was pale, his eyes shut tight, completely motionless. Grief overwhelmed Harry. "Professor Dumbledore. Siagi, what exactly happened?" "It's no wonder I thought he died. After all, Voldemort himself had broken into the school. Siagi saved me. Without his special training, I wouldn't have been able to cast that spell. If I hadn't learned it, I'd surely be dead now. Yet, I never expected this." Harry's eyes brimmed with sorrow.
Dumbledore sighed softly.
"Siagi isn't dead, Harry. You should head to the infirmary yourself. You've been injured too.
Come with me.
After you've been checked, you can ask Siagi whatever you wish." At the infirmary, Madame Pomfrey conducted a detailed examination of Siagi. Apart from noting that he seemed somewhat weak, she found nothing seriously amiss. She prepared a large cup of potion for him, one said to be highly nourishing, similar to what he'd regularly consumed after being rescued in Albania. Only this version was reportedly prepared by Snape himself, making it far more potent than any Siaji had consumed before. Snape himself, however, didn't personally deliver it. As Siaji drank the potion, Dumbledore answered questions from Harry and Hermione. Ron was also there. He'd been knocked unconscious by one of Professor McGonagall's giant chess pieces. By the time Siaji arrived, Ron was already in the infirmary. Siaji paid no attention to Dumbledore's words. He quickly fell asleep. This nourishing potion also had excellent sedative properties. When he awoke, he learned that Cassandra had visited the night before and was absolutely furious. Siaji inwardly rejoiced. As expected, Felix Felici's truly was incredible. By falling asleep, he'd evaded any chance of Cassandra taking her anger out on him. A pity, though, that one shouldn't consume Felix Felici's too often. Contentedly, Siaji figured that after a night of cooling down, Cassandra must have calmed down by now. Unfortunately, he was completely mistaken. Upon hearing that Siaji had woken up, his friends took turns visiting him, including Cassandra. Cassandra gazed at him coldly, as though looking at trash. "Are you trying to block a killing curse for every girl you know?" Hermione's face instantly turned red upon hearing this. Siaji momentarily faltered, yet, being no ordinary person, he possessed thick skin rivaling Hagrid's rock cakes.
Oh.
Cassandra, the situation was dire back then. I didn't really think about anything else. Of course. I understand perfectly. Cassandra's eyes reddened once more. I've always known what kind of person you are. Even if it were a total stranger standing before you, you'd still choose to save them, right? That's why I gave you that protective charm. I knew all along. I knew I couldn't stop you. Cassandra, truthfully, I'd hoped you'd never have to use that charm. Yet, I'm terrified that one day you might actually lose your life because of it. Cassandra, your charm saved me. Siaji gazed tenderly at her. That gentle expression instantly softened Cassandra's heart. There was no denying it. Siaji's irresistible charm was off the charts. He boasted a full 10 points in charm. Hermione spoke up guiltily. It's all my fault. I should have listened to Professor Dumbledore and stayed in the Gryffindor common room. Yet I foolishly thought I could help. I almost got Siaji killed. No, this isn't your fault, Hermione.
Cassandra replied.
No one could have anticipated encountering the Dark Lord right here at Hogwarts. I'm furious at how recklessly he disregards his own life, yet, had he not saved you, he wouldn't be the Siaji I know and care about. Cassandra added softly. Do you like Siaji? Hermione hesitantly asked. Who would like him? Don't say such nonsense. Cassandra's face turned crimson. Then, as if realizing something, she glanced at Hermione and gritted her teeth. Right now, she felt an overwhelming urge to grab Siaji and give him a good bite. Since he'd fallen asleep the night before, Siaji had missed hearing how Dumbledore responded to Harry. He had no idea what role he'd supposedly played in the entire incident. Still, Dumbledore wouldn't have revealed the truth, that Siaji had actually acted as a mole for Voldemort. Sure enough, Siaji soon learned from Harry exactly how Dumbledore had spun the tale. Quite simply, in Dumbledore's version, Siaji played almost no active role whatsoever. According to Dumbledore, Siaji knew nothing beforehand. He'd merely been out on a typical Gryffindor midnight adventure when he happened to witness Hermione under attack, thus blocking a killing curse meant for her. Thanks to Dumbledore's endorsement, Hermione and Ron readily accepted this explanation. Harry, however, remained skeptical. He knew full well that Siaji possessed certain prophetic abilities. Precisely because Siaji had foreseen Harry's danger that he'd subjected him to several days of brutal, grueling training. Only by mastering the hound steps had Harry truly managed to survive. Yet every time he recalled that jeep, Harry still shuddered uncontrollably. Chapter 100. Mr. G's vision of a brilliant future where magic and technology unite. What is the happiest moment for a student? Of course, it's after all homework and final exams are finished. This is especially true at Hogwarts. In the days to come, young wizards would have no classes, no longer need to fret over assignments in the library, nor bother themselves with exam revision. They were all in a state of relaxation. In just a few days, once their grades were announced, they'd be on holiday. Yet right now, Xiaji couldn't relax at all. Leaning against the pillows on his hospital bed, he gazed outside at the cheerful crowd. People's joys and sorrows rarely align. All he saw was their noise and clamor. Suddenly, this thought crossed Xiaji's mind. At that moment, Cassandra Vole sat before him, her face cold, peeling an apple with a fruit knife. Xiaji wondered why she didn't use magic for this task. But noticing the intense hostility in her slicing motions, he sensibly chose not to ask. It seemed to him that Cassandra was treating the apple as if it were him, or some part of his body. After quite some time, she handed him an apple riddled with dents and now half its original size. Xiaji chuckled as he took it, then took a bite, only to immediately hit the core. Yet he had to pretend it tasted wonderful. "Your apples are so sweet," he said, though the core was rather sour.
Humph.
"Do you truly like them?" "Of course. They're absolutely delicious." Before he could finish, he saw Cassandra plunge her knife into another apple, then stand up and leave. This apple really is sweet." Xiaji was baffled, unable to grasp why she'd become upset. Just then, Hermione entered, clutching a thick book in her hands. Even on holiday, she still brought books along for entertainment. Curious, she watched Cassandra depart, then noticed Xiaji eating an apple. "Is it sweet? I wrote to my mum asking her to buy some, and I'll deliver them this morning." Hermione set her book aside on a chair, then curiously picked up the apple with the knife still stuck in it. Struggling to pull the blade free, she began peeling the apple herself. Her technique far surpassed Cassandra's. Each stroke removed only a thin layer of skin. Xiaji scratched his head. "So, these were apples from you?" I wondered where Hogwarts got them from. Now he understood why Cassandra had seemed upset. Yet Hermione's apples truly were sweet. This was a pitch-black room. Inside stood but one stone bed. A gaunt figure lay curled up on it, covered by a tattered, thin blanket. In that oppressive darkness, time itself seemed to have ceased. Suddenly, through a crack in the wall barely large enough to be called a window, a paper airplane flew in. The curled figure stirred. He snatched it up and eagerly unfolded it. The paper airplane revealed a letter, its elegant script glowing faintly in the dark. A spark of life flared within the figure's previously vacant eyes. "Mr. G, who wishes to remain anonymous, greetings. Apologies, I've been occupied lately, hence only now can I reply. Regarding your earlier views, I hold differing opinions. You claimed that magical fire burns only within a few select individuals, and thus non-magical muggles ought to be ruled by wizards. I disagree. First, setting aside whether your view is correct, I ask, can wizard rule over muggles even succeed? Considering sheer numbers, how many wizards exist worldwide versus muggles? You might assume that with their wondrous magic, wizards could easily dominate non-magical muggles, who are weak and powerless. But are muggles truly weak? In truth, they possess their own kind of magic, one we call technology. Have you ever considered this? While we rely on owls to send letters, sneering at muggles' lack of magic, they've already achieved long-distance communication. To my knowledge, they've even invented a device akin to a mirror of Erist, one allowing two people thousands of miles apart to converse face-to-face at any time. This marvel was invented purely through Muggle ingenuity, requiring no magic whatsoever. Soon it will become widespread. Consider this. Within the wizarding world, such mirrors are rare, precious alchemical artifacts. Thus, are Muggles truly weak? Their numbers are vast, their progress rapid. Can we truly dominate them? Recently, Muggles have even flown into space, successfully landing on the moon. Yes, they achieved this without magic, yet no wizard has ever set foot on the moon. They effortlessly accomplish what we cannot. This alone demands our vigilance. They advance ceaselessly, while we wizards, Many gifted individuals still pore over ancient grimoires, studying obscure spells. Few dare to imagine what the wizarding world's future might hold. For nearly a century, our progress has stagnated, barely any development at all. With Muggle technology advancing, can the wizarding world truly remain hidden? I believe that as Muggle science progresses, our world will inevitably be exposed. Once they fully decode the secrets of magic and fathom all our tricks, what shall we have left? Yet we may take solace. Muggles cannot learn our magic, but we can learn theirs. Why not? Ultimately, Muggles and wizards alike are human. Whether ruled by Muggles or wizards, neither outcome serves humanity's true future. What we must strive for is societal progress, not endless squabbles over who should rule. I've long imagined this. What would occur if magic and technology collaborated? Muggle technology could elevate wizards' quality of life immeasurably, while wizard magic could solve countless problems plaguing Muggles. Magic's flame and technology's light would intertwine, forging a radiant future for human civilization. Is such a future not worth pursuing? Of course, this vision won't manifest overnight. The International Statute of Secrecy protects us, yet also hinders our advancement. Realizing this ideal may plunge our world into turmoil, but reform always entails pain. And throughout history, there have been no eternal friends or foes, only eternal interests. When Muggles and wizards both recognize mutual benefit, collaboration becomes inevitable. I recall an old wizard who once proclaimed, "For the greater good," a noble sentiment, though he erred in defining what that good entailed. #X, who wishes to remain anonymous. The gaunt figure slowly lowered the letter, then tremblingly rose to his feet. He gazed upward through that narrow window at the moonlit sky and momentarily stood entranced. Suddenly, he became filled with longing for that envisioned future where magic and technology shone side by side in splendor. His once dull, lifeless heart now blazed like a roaring inferno.